Today is June 26, 2024. My name is Bobby Goodman, and I have the pleasure and honor of interviewing Jeff Genecov. Jeff, thanks for being here today.
Of course.
So, Jeff, let me just start with some of your background. Tell us a little bit about your family history, where they came from, where you were born. Let's start with the family history.
How far back do you want me to go?
Let's go to your grandparents.
Okay, so my dad's side of the family, my grandmother was born in Kansas City, Missouri, and my grandfather was born in Waco. And they met outside of Fort Worth, or in Fort Worth at a Jewish singles dance kind of thing. They lived in Waco, they lived in Jacksonville, Florida, they lived in El Paso, and then about the time my dad was 10, 11, 12, somewhere in that neighborhood, they moved here. And then my mother's side of the family was a little bit different story. My grandfather on that side was born in Palestine, Texas, and his older brother, I think, had gone to practice medicine out in California, and my grandfather had been going to Rice University, and he got tuberculosis, and he had to drop out. And so the air in California was supposed to be better, so they went to California, and that's where he met my grandmother. But well, actually, it wasn't the grandmother that I knew. The grandmother that was my mother's birth mother was originally from Chicago, and I don't know how she ended up in L.A., but she ended up dying shortly after my mother's birth. My mom was, both my parents were only children, but mom was not orphaned early, but she lost her mother within the first year of her life, maybe even the first 6 months. And so my grandfather was a single father for quite some time, married to, I think at least once, during the time before he met the woman who adopted my mother, became my grandmother, the only grandmother on that side of the family I ever knew. And so she raised my mom. And so to go back, my grandfather on my dad's side, his name was Maurice Genecov. They called him Monk. My grandmother's name was Sophie. And on my mom's side, the grandmother that I knew was named Bernice Bernice Kay. And then she was originally from Omaha. And she was a teacher out in California because her sister had moved out there, and she moved out there with her. And my grandfather on that side's name was Josh Goldberg. And my grandmother, who I never knew, was named Juliet Rosensteel. So that's where the grandparents came from. Originally, and it's interesting, my wife Lisa says that I was the first Jewish person she ever met our age that didn't have grandparents with Eastern European accents, because all four of my grandparents were born in the United States.
Wow.
Most of them their families came over in the late 1800s to the turn of the century, and my Juliet's family was from Germany, but the rest of them I think were all from Lithuania or Poland or somewhere, the Pale of settlement there. Mm-hmm. And so my dad grew up here in Dallas from the time he was 11, 12, 13, something like that, and he went to Highland Park High School, and then SMU, and then University of Texas, and mom grew up in L.A.
How'd they meet?
So dad, after he finished college at UT, he went to dental school down at Baylor Dental School here in town, and when he was in Navy ROTC, because they would pay they'd pay for dental school, and then you owed him 2 years in the Navy after. So he was a naval dental officer, and he spent a year in Japan, stationed with the Marine Air Group, and then he came back to Southern California and was stationed just north of San Diego. And his roommate was a guy, I guess, from the Los Angeles area, and he was also a dentist, and he was engaged to my mom's best friend at the time. And so they were introduced.
Right.
And their first date was to the Rose Bowl parade in 1958, January 1st, 1958, wow. And they were married that August.
Wow.
So, because Dad was going back to Texas, he was finishing up his stint in the Navy there, and he was going back to Texas, and he didn't want to go back without her.
They were married in
Los
Dallas?
Angeles.
Oh, in Los Angeles, and then they moved back here.
Mm-hmm.
So, tell me a little bit about when you were born. Let's talk about you now for a second.
It's all about me.
As it
it's always about me.
One
neat story before about
sure.
about their their courtship and all. So my grandfather, Josh Goldberg, had a sister actually that lived here in Dallas, and she was the like executive secretary to like the Texas Bakers Association. Well, the guy that was the head of the president at that time, as a layperson, was a guy here from Dallas that's very well known named Jake Goldman. Jake Goldman's son Larry was my dad's very best friend. My grandfather and his family did not know that my Aunt Geg knew Jake Goldman, so they called Geg and said, "What do you know about this Genecov boy?" And they were able to say, "No, he's okay. It's not a problem."
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's just a really small world.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about yourself. You were born in Dallas. Where were you born?
I was born in Englewood, New Jersey, and I'm sad that this is on tape because I don't admit it very often. After Mom and Dad got married, Dad had a residency in orthodontics at Columbia in New York City. So they lived across the Hudson River in New Jersey in Fort Lee, and I was born in Englewood at Englewood Hospital. And we lived there, I don't know, maybe 8 months before they moved back to Dallas, and Dad started his orthodontic practice.
You were born what year?
May 1959. So I think Dad finished up at the end of the summer, and I think they were back here by first of 1960.
So you're a Dallasite almost.
Yeah. They said the story is I may not have been born here, but I got here as fast as I could.
You really did.
I really did.
So tell us a little bit about the rest of your family, your siblings, and your life growing up in Dallas.
Okay. So I have two siblings. I'm the oldest. My sister Julie's 3 years younger than me, and then my younger brother David was 4.5 years younger than me. And David, as you know, passed away in a tragic auto accident about a little over a year and a half ago. But we grew up typical kind of, it's 1960s Dallas lifestyle. I mean, we were very fortunate that we belonged to the Columbian Club, so we spent a lot of time out there when we were kids. We had a great neighborhood that we grew up in. We went to Harry C. Withers Elementary and had a block party on Alta Vista. They'd have a block party every 4th of July and every Memorial Day, things like that, and the kids would ride their bikes up and down the streets and raise all kinds of hell, and the parents would put food out on the front lawn, and you'd go from house to house eating. It was a lot of fun. And we'd walk to school or ride our bikes. And we had a chicken coop in the backyard. Did Julie tell you about this?
No.
We had live chickens in our backyard. My dad always kind of fancied himself as a gentleman farmer, and he had an uncle in Tyler who had a ranch, and so he gave us chickens, and so we had chickens, fresh eggs every morning for a long time when I was a little kid. Let's see. So I went through the 6th grade. Well, let's see. Started off. We all belonged to Sherith Israel. My grandparents had been there. My dad and my mom, and then we grew up going to Sherith Israel, for Sunday school and Hebrew school. And then we were all at Withers. I was there till the 6th grade, and then I went to St. Mark's in 7th grade. David, I think, started St. Mark's in the 2nd grade or 3rd grade, and Julie started Green Hill about the same time, 2nd or 3rd grade. And we lived on that house on Alta Vista until right before the end of my freshman year at St. Mark's. I was 14, so that would have been 1974. And then we moved to the house that they lived in for another 25 years or so on St. Gabriel, the corner of St. Gabriel and Welch. And we had a great backyard, and we had lots of parties, and my parents wanted all the kids to come and hang out, and they did.
Very cool.
And we did.
And from St. Mark's, you graduated from St. Mark's,
yes.
And you went on to where?
University of Texas. And then and while I was at the University of Texas, we had a great time, and during the breaks, we'd come back to Dallas and work at Goodies from Goodman, making Big D baskets. And the second year I talked Bobby into letting me drive the delivery truck, and so I delivered baskets of fruit and flowers and all kinds of stuff to people all over the city. It was so much fun. And then, so I was at UT for 4 years, and then I left there and went to dental school here in Dallas, and stayed for 2 years to do my orthodontic residency, and then I went into practice with my father.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And growing up, you can mention remember to share. Were you involved in any Jewish activities, AZA, or any of the other?
Yeah, from the time I can remember. So I went to the JCC preschool, and I went to the JCC day camp, and I went to day camp at Sherith Israel, and then I played baseball and basketball at the JCC up until the time I was old enough to play in the city leagues in North Dallas Chamber, and even after that, for a while, I played. We had great baseball leagues here at the J every summer, and they'd have community day, and that would be the kickoff on Memorial Day weekend, and they'd have all kinds of stuff. People were making hot dogs and cookies, and there were contests of all kinds. It was like a big state fair almost on the JCC campus, and then they'd have a baseball tournament that kicked off the summer, and the people. That's when they opened the pool, the outdoor pool, and that was a big deal. We didn't have an indoor pool back then,
Right.
and so I went to JCC camp, and I went to and then I got into, as I got older, right about the time I hit 8th grade, we started talking about BBYO. And all the guys in my class at St. Mark's, virtually all of them, wanted to get into Kaplan AZA. And they told us that we could get in the spring of 1973. And so I played softball for Kaplan that summer. By the time the fall came around and they were going to get ready to take us and induct us, they told us, "Oh, gee, this AIT class is going to be too big, so we can't take you." So we all got together and said, maybe we ought to start our own chapter. So Mark Lozado and Howard Freed and Jack Steinberg and Harris Block helped us get the thing off the ground and helped us start, and they were our big brothers. And so we started our own chapter, and we got our charter, and we had a really competitive sports and social chapter, and I was real active in that. And I was real active. I got active then on the regional level and the district level, and held officer positions in all the different levels.
Wow.
Well, I got to go to international convention one year. That was pretty cool. Let's see. And then I was involved from a social aspect of it. I was a nom for Weinstein BBG, and then when I lost Bo for that, a year later, my sister's crew decided to start a chapter the same way, and they chose me and two of my very closest friends, Gary Block and Brad Hacker, and then Aaron Hauser, to be their big brothers, to help them get the chapter started. So I had my hand in starting 2 chapters, which sadly are no longer in existence anymore. Both of them folded.
So you did Jewish organizations growing up through high school and in fraternity and down in Austin, and obviously very active in that.
I was I played baseball, I played football, and I wrestled at St. Mark's, but wrestling was really the thing that I wasn't great. I was better than average, but of the 3, that was my best sport. But I played softball in leagues all the way through with guys from around the J, all the way through college and after. And so I went off, graduated. Let's see, went to UT, and was a ZBT at Texas, and was part of the Texas Cowboys. I was in Plan 2, and had a great 4 years. Worked real hard, had a lot of fun, and when I graduated, I went to dental school here in Dallas. And at that period, once I got to dental school here in town, I started becoming active in the Federation, and going to the Federation events and so forth. And I actually met my wife at a Jewish singles party that George Bramnick threw.
Very nice. Well, let's stay on that subject for a second. Let's talk about your family and how you met your wife and when you got married. Tell us a little bit about that, and then of course the family that y'all created.
So Lisa grew up in McAllen, Texas, and she was very active in her chapter of BBYO down in McAllen. And I went to a convention where I was the coordinator for what they call the District Leadership Training Conference, which was a 7-state event, because they used to have 7 states in what was called District 7 BBYO, and then they cut it up and got rid of the district levels, and now they don't get together with big groups like that from many different states anymore. It's more local, more regionalized. But Lisa, I met Lisa at that conference where she had just graduated from high school and I was getting ready to be a senior. And we were introduced, but just cursorily. I mean, I had known her, who she was up to that point, because she was one of the real popular people that everybody knew, because she was pretty and smart and I was friends with everybody. And by the time I met her, she was getting ready to go off to Stanford University. And she went to Stanford and then went to law school at UT. Graduated from UT, lived in Baton Rouge for a year working, and then came to Dallas to work with a law firm called Jackson Walker. And she was at a party that George Bramnick threw that I went to, and we started. In fact, I went with my sister and Susan Pizzette, and I ran into Lisa there, and we started talking. And the next thing I knew, everybody else was leaving, and Julie was tugging on my we got to go, Jeff. I'm like, I don't think I want to.
Very nice.
So Lisa and I started going out, and that was probably, I guess that was maybe late September, early October, and by springtime we were, exclusive, and 2 years later we were married.
What year was that?
That was, we met in 1986, or re-met in 1986, and we got married in 1989.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And then you've got your practice going, your orthodontic practice going with your dad, and she's an attorney, and so I guess that sometimes you decided to have a family, huh?
Yeah, somehow we found time to do that. And our first child, Adam, was born in January 1991, and our daughter Becca was born in May of 1993. And they started kind of going along the similar lines that I grew up with. We lived not too far from where I grew up, and so the kids started off at Akiba, going to preschool, and then transitioned to Lamplighter. And then Adam went to St. Mark's. Becca ended up at Levine Academy, and then transitioned to ESD, Episcopal School of Dallas, when she hit the ninth grade. And Adam ended up going to Stanford and becoming a mechanical engineer. He got there undergraduate and master's degree in engineering, and Becca went to UT and got a degree in communications.
And any of them married?
Yes. Adam got married just about 2 years ago. July 31st, I think, 2022. And May 9th, 2024, they had our first grandchild, Miles Lee Stein Genecov. His wife's name is Bree Stein. She grew up in Atlanta, and she went to Vanderbilt undergrad and then went to Stanford Business School, and they met through mutual Stanford friends.
And where do they live today?
They live near Stanford. They like the California lifestyle.
I hear.
Sadly.
So it's a nice place to visit, that little grandchild.
Yeah.
So you're involved in Dallas. You're got a family.
Yep.
They've gotten involved in and kind of, like you said, growing up the same way. What organizations, community are you involved with now that they're gone?
Well, so Lisa and I both got in real heavily involved in the Federation early on, and we also got involved at the synagogue. And they kind of concurrently, there was a young leadership development group at both places that we were included in. And then we went on the Federation mission trip in 1995. That was the first one they'd taken in a while, and they called it the Minion Mission because we had 10 buses full of people, and we took 400 people to Israel. And it was the first time an LL flight had ever landed at DFW Airport, and we had met a lot of really cool people on our bus, and had a lot of really good friends that were already our friends that were on the bus, like the Goodmans and the Staubs and the Prescotts, but we had a great time. And then shortly after that, when we came back, they asked Lisa and me to co-chair the next leadership development group with Lane and Cheryl Waits, and so we had a really good time doing that. And we took a mission to Israel, and 2 years later, we went to Poland and then Israel after that. So we were real involved there. I was on the board at the synagogue. We both were on the board at the Federation at varying times. Lisa became very involved and was kind of their chief go-to governance person for a long time in the last 15 years or so. And then she won the Best Nathan Award, and I won the Izesmer Award, which was kind of cool. I think I may have been the first winner whose father had also won it. Dad won it years before for
Very cool.
young leadership with the Federation. So that was pretty neat. And Dad, so I learned from my parents. My folks were involved in everything. My dad was on the board and an officer at the JCC. He was on the board and an officer at the Fed. He was president of Sherith Israel. He was, and then he was very involved in the orthodontic societies, and he was president of the Southwestern Society of Orthodontists, which was the kind of like our, it was kind of set up like BBYO, but that was our 7-state or 5-state orthodontic association that was part of the American Association of Orthodontists. And then he was involved with some other orthodontic national groups that he had leadership roles in. Mom was she was head of the PTA. She was the chair of the Dallas BBYO Council at one point. She was a Girl Scout troop leader, and so she did a lot of that kind of thing as well. They were both very hands-on parents and very hands-on in the community. And then, from my end, once I got out of dental school, I started getting involved in the orthodontic school. I started getting involved at St. Mark's. I started raising money for them in the late '80s and being involved in what went on campus to kind of give back to, because I couldn't repay them for what they did for me. And then as we got a little further down the road, Adam got into St. Mark's, and I now can never repay what they did for him. So I've been actively involved in what's going on at St. Mark's for a long time. And I was involved in the Alumni Association, and I chaired that, and then now I'm on the Board of Trustees, and and on various committees for that. So Lisa calls it the mothership, because between my brother, his 3 boys, me, and Adam, there were 6 Genecovs there for the period of, from I got there in 71, and Adam graduated in 2009. So with a few breaks in between, we had a pretty long run.
Wow, that's pretty awesome.
And our cousin Fraser Marcus has gone through and counted up all the people that he's related to that went to St. Mark's, and he said that he's got more people that he's related to that have gone through there than any other family in the history of the school.
I believe it. I'm one of his relatives.
I know. That's why I said our cousin.
Well, obviously really involved in the community. When you were growing up, Jeff, how do you think the Jewish community, or was it different then than it is today? How has the Jewish community changed, and how has Dallas changed in your eyes over the years?
Well, I think the Jewish community's changed as it's gotten significantly bigger. I mean, when I was growing up, we had, I think, 3 synagogues until there was Temple Emmanuel, which was the biggest. Sherith Israel was next. Tifereth was much smaller, and then I guess around the time in the early to mid 70s, I guess is when Temple Shalom started. But there was nothing in the outlying areas. There were no Jews living in like Plano or Frisco or even anywhere but hardly between here and Fort Worth, Arlington, very few. And so we knew just about every Jewish person in town. My dad treated a lot of the families. I went to camp or synagogue or something with a lot of them. So there were tons in my class at St. Mark's had up until the last couple of years had almost a third Jewish kids in my class. There was some attrition towards the end, but we graduated with like 20% of our class being Jewish, which was a big concentration because so many of the families wanted their kids to get the best education they could. And Highland Park was still kind of, it wasn't off limits for us, but we weren't. It's interesting. When my dad was there were quite a few Jews, but by the time it was my turn, so Highland Park was not real open in that regard. And so as an adjunct, they either went to Hillcrest or White or St. Mark's and Green Hill, and then J.J. Pierce and Richardson started to see a lot more growth out that way as things started to move north. So there's now I can't count how many synagogues there are.
Right.
There's lots of them. A lot of them are smaller. We've got a much larger Orthodox community here now. I mean, you rarely saw people with payas and tzitzit in Dallas back then, and now you go to Tom Thumb grocery store and you see guys in big jacked up 4-wheel drive pickup trucks, wearing seat and pants and a kippah, and that didn't happen back then. And obviously Dallas has grown dramatically. The community has brought people from all over everywhere, and the outlying areas have begun to. It's not going to be too terribly long, probably in our kids' lifetime, that Dallas. The roads between Dallas, or the communities between Dallas and Oklahoma, there's not going to be any breaks anymore.
Right. Well, obviously, a topic of today is anti-Semitism. When you were growing up, did you ever feel any anti-Semitism, or do you feel it today?
A little bit back then. I mean, I felt it in different ways at different times. So, for example, when I was in the 2nd grade at Harry C. Withers, I was in the choir in like the Glee Club kind of thing, mm-hmm. and they were going to have the Christmas show, and I didn't want to sing the Christmas carols, and I told my choir director that, and she was a very evangelical Bible Belt Baptist, and she dressed me down in front of the whole class, which to me was absolutely inexcusable. Mm-hmm. As I got older. I heard things from my dad. So, for example, again, I told you he was involved in a lot of orthodontic societies, and so was I. I had leadership positions and I was like the second president of the Southwestern Society of Orthodontists whose father had been it. Mm. So that was kind of cool.
Very cool.
And I did stints with the Dallas Association of Orthodontists and the Texas Association. And as we were going through some of those things, there were groups of people who were anti-Semitic. When I was in dental school, I had a teacher who, or professor, I guess you call. He had a professor, but he was anyway. I don't want to go into that. But our first practical, my first year in dental school, so September, October, in anatomy, was on Yom Kippur, and I had never not gone to school. I had never not gone to services. I'd always gone. I'd always been more observant in that regard on the high holidays. And I went to him and asked him to please, cut me some slack and give me let me take a test later or take it before or whatever. And he said, absolutely not. If you don't come, you get a 0. Mm. So I did. I didn't have any choice. And today you couldn't get away with that. But in those days that was. And remember, this was just a few years after Baylor had been part. They split off from Baylor University, but it was still very much a Baylor-centric institution, and I guess I could have gotten around that by not going there, but it was the best dental school in the state at the time, and it was the right thing to do. So there were those kinds of things. And while I was in dental school, I had one of the guys in my dental fraternity. I was at the time the treasurer, and I was collecting dues. And one guy goes, "What are you? I'll give you your money later, you Jew." Mm. And I grabbed him by the tie. We had to wear ties in those days at the dental school. I grabbed him by the tie and I jerked him down. I said, "If you say something like that again, I will break your effing neck."
He didn't know you were an all-state wrestler.
No, he did. And he backed off, and he said, "Look, I'm sorry, I didn't mean anything by it." And we've been friends ever since. But those kinds of things happened infrequently, but enough, that you remember them.
Right. Sure.
And actually maybe because it was infrequent enough, that's why I remember it.
Right.
And today's, and I felt it a little bit at UT, because we were a Jewish fraternity. Some of the non-Jewish fraternities didn't really mix with us much, and some of the non-Jewish girls didn't really mix with us much. I think it's different now. There's more non-Jewish kids in ZBT now at Texas, and they mix and match with the other fraternities a little bit more freely now. More Jewish kids are in the other what we call then non-Jewish fraternities.
Right.
And you may remember this, but do you remember Bobby? I forget what year it was. Do you remember Herb Meyer brought the Jews for Jesus to sing in the cafeteria? He thought he was doing us a favor. He thought he was being altruistic, and they get there and they start singing Hebrew folk songs, and the next thing you know, they're talking about Jesus. And, and we went up to him and said, "What's this about, man?"
How times have changed.
Yeah.
So, Jeff, let me ask you this. I love this next question because I love asking it. So, who's your role model?
Well, I think pretty clearly my dad was my role model. I mean, he was. I had my sights set on being an orthodontist from the time I was probably 8 or 9 years old, and practicing with him was one of my major goals in life. And we had a really great working relationship for 20 plus years until he got too sick to practice anymore, and I bought his practice. But he taught me a lot in every aspect. He taught work ethic, character, drive, community, Rahmanas, and so I think he was number one on the list for sure. For sure.
Nice. Well, what are you most proud of?
My family. I mean, my wife is a rock star. Anybody that knows her says so, and even though she'll deny it. She's got in baseball they talk about having all the five abilities. You hit with power, field, run, and what Lisa can do it all. and the five tools, and Lisa's got them all. And because of that, she created a wonderful home for me and my kids, and did it while she was practicing law at Big Law for 40 years, and she was able to keep it all in a balance. I mean, she juggled a lot of balls and be really incredibly community oriented, and she's involved in all kinds of things like the Center for Women at Law, the UT Law Foundation. She was an officer in the Federation. She ran an organization that she helped start called the Center for Women at Law at UT, which is she was chair of that deal for a few years, which is a big fundraiser, but it's also a way to propel women into the legal world and retain them once they're there, so that they can learn how to manage life, family, work, just like Lisa did. And she's a role model for those folks. And then my kids, my kids are awesome, and everybody thinks that about their kids. But my son Adam, who's the firstborn, Adam had an incredible moral compass from day one, and he was a really hard worker. But from the time he started, interesting enough, he did get into St. Mark's the first time he tried out in first grade. He applied, and he had too many spilkies. He just couldn't sit still long enough for the test, and so they told us that he would to test again. And so when he did, he got in the fourth grade. And from the time he started fourth grade until the time he graduated from Stanford, he never made a B.
Wow. I
mean, just Lisa's dad was brilliant. My dad was brilliant. My kids did it. Adam got a double dose of he's real smart. And then he met a really wonderful young woman from a great family in Atlanta, and they just gave us this most beautiful little grandson. So but Adam's got the heart and the brains and the drive. He's got a great work ethic, and he's already you can tell he's going to be a wonderful father. Becca is the one that has the street smarts, and she has an incredible. She's really, really smart too, but in a very different way than Adam. And she knew early on that she had a few minor learning differences that she overcame, and graduated from UT with over a B average, which with learning differences in a big school like that, it's incredible. But she's incredibly organized. She's got a work ethic that doesn't stop, and now she works for. She knew early on that she wanted to go into basketball marketing or management of some sort, and so she started in UT creating her resume so that when it came time to get out of school, she'd have something that she could give to people that had some weight to it. And she applied for and got a internship with the New York Mets that was a year paid internship right out of school. So she went up there for a year. They helped her and introduced her to the people at the New York Knicks when her internship was up, and she got a job there. And she'd had to interview against lots of other people. Like there were 300 people, I think, that interviewed for the Mets job, and she was one of two people that got it in New York City. A small town girl from Texas. And so over the last, that was 2015. And so over the last 9 years or so, she's built this resume. And she came back to Dallas after working with the Knicks for 3 or 4 years. And she started working for the Mavericks in late 2019. And has taken, social media is her is her gig. She runs the social media department for them and travels with the team. And when she got there, that they had a measured fan engagement of number 27 in the league out of 30 teams, and now they're number 4,
Wow.
behind the Celtics, the Lakers, and the Knicks.
Wow.
So
Very cool.
she runs that department. So I mean, I'm really proud of both of them for their intelligence, their hard work. They're good people. You know, really good people. They've got great hearts, and they're very sympathetic and empathetic, and so so that my family's what I'm most proud of for sure.
Right. So, is there anything, Jeff, that I didn't ask that you'd want to add?
Let's see. I'm real proud of my orthodontic practice. Second, that's probably the second most important thing in my world. It's a unique practice because we take care of a lot of kids with craniofacial anomalies, cleft lip and palate, and so forth. And my dad started doing that in the early '60s, and he was a pioneer in that arena. And I got into it by working with him. My younger brother David, who followed behind me, was carrying the lecture slides after I got past that, and so he decided that rather than work at it from the orthodontic side, he'd go to school and become he went to medical school after St. Mark's and UT. He went to medical school, and then he became a general surgeon, and then a plastic surgeon, then a craniofacial surgeon. So when he moved back to Dallas, he and I worked together doing the same kind of things that Dad and David's predecessor had done. And so we've taken care of kids from all over the world, and we've really made some significant changes in people's lives. And you know, it's a tragedy that David's not with me to continue doing that anymore. I miss him every day. He was my best friend and my colleague in many ways. And we lectured literally all over the world and together about these kinds of patients. And so I miss him a lot. But I'm real proud of the things that we did, both separately and together in our chosen fields. So
As you should be.
It's really cool. I've had the opportunity to treat a lot of my friends' kids.
Yes.
And now I'm treating grandkids. I've got one family in my practice where I've got the mom, the grandmother, the mom, and the kids. I mean, it's fun. That's fun.
That is fun. Jeff, I can't tell you how much we thank you for sharing your story and your time with us.
It's been my pleasure.
And
Thank you,
it's just an amazing story.
It's nothing special. As my dad used to say, by big deals, I'm no big deal.
I love it. All righty. Thank you, Jeff.
Was that good? I do okay?